Thank you for joining us live. We're here in Burringbar, which is northern New South Wales, Australia. We're in the garden of Janine Price, and she grows these beautiful flowers, and she sells them with out the front here and delivers them around, and it's just a beautiful showcase of what you can do in a very small suburban backyard. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here in these beds?
Of course. Thanks. So we've got some raised beds here, which are wicking beds, which help retain the moisture, especially in the drought. They just keep the gardens growing well without having to water constantly. So that's just in these 4 along here. And then we've just got a really sort of all over the place perennial / annual style garden. There's food and flowers all mixed in together. Obviously the Flow Hive, the honeybees, and we've got native bees as well. Water, bird baths for all the pollinators and the birds coming through. And it's just sort of whatever's in season, whatever's working at the time goes into the garden. And some of it works and some of it doesn't, but that's the fun of growing a garden.
You had a bit of a hiccup about, was it a year ago?
Nearly a year ago. This is my son Frank.
He's not the hiccup.
Yeah, not the hiccup. He was about 7 months at the time, but we got flooded through here in the property. Burringbar got really smashed through that time. So we got about 1.5 meters through the property and the house, which unfortunately, I had
a lot of water.
It's a lot of water, yeah. We had 2 flow hives, and I think due to some naivety on my behalf and also just not believing that it was going to happen, we didn't prepare the hives to move them before the flood came through, and it kind of it came through in the middle of the night about 3 a.m. He was tiny, it was just a bit it was a bit quick to really save the bees, so unfortunately we lost 2 hives.
In the end, you've got to save yourself first.
Yeah.
So what, did they float away?
They all floated into the back corner here, so the water came up, it pushed everything down, and it was just a big pile of bees and furniture and debris.
Oh,
yeah, it was
and all your gardens would have been ruined.
Yeah, we lost a lot in the garden, but that's the great thing about nature and gardens and bees, is that we can grow again and start over, and they can recover, and it shows you how resilient nature is, almost more than we are. It's ready to go again like the next day.
Wow,
Yeah.
so many stories, and so many people in this area have similar stories to share of the floods that we had, not 1 but 2 last year, that came through these areas that are lower down, and a lot of people had a lot of hardship from that. So the good news is we're here today to get you going again.
Yeah.
You've got a hive here, and we're going to put it into your new Flow Hive. So it's a hive swap essentially.
Yeah.
So stay tuned in. If you've got questions, put it in the comments below, and we'll answer questions, anything to do with Janine Price and her flower garden, or growing flowers, bees, pollination, beehives, flow hives, anything to do with bees at all. Put your questions in the comments below. Also let us know whereabouts in the world you are tuning in from. So I'm just going to run you through the basics of what we're going to do here. Here's what we call a brood box. So the hive has grown to the point where it's filling 1 brood box. Now what we're going to do is basically move that into this box. We don't have to, we could leave it in that box, but we've decided to move it into this new Flow Hive 2 here. And we'll have a look. It might be ready to put the super on, or it might not. But meanwhile, think of your questions, put it in the comments below. So I'll just explain the process very quickly. The first thing to do, apart from protecting yourself with your bee suit and smoker and so on, is give the hive a bit of a smoke and let it settle down for a minute or 2. Then what we're going to do is pick up the hive and move it. We're going to move it just to there. That way the new hive can go right in its place and all the returning bees will come back to this location, because bees geolocate right to the spot, which is a super interesting thing about bees. So we're better off putting the new hive right here, and that way returning bees can just come straight back to where we're putting the new hive, where basically the bees in the frames, the brood box, the queen and everything will be in the same spot as it was before. So that's what we're trying to achieve if we can. You can move hives a metre or two a day, so don't be too worried if you can't put it in exactly the same spot, but it's nice to if you can. I'm just going to put my bee veil on, and we will just make sure the zips are done up, protecting ourselves. Janine's putting hers on too. And first thing we're going to do is just move the hive over. Now, if you're strong, you could do a single box like this on your own, but it's always good to get help. You don't need to be a hero in beekeeping. And I'm standing right in front of the entrance, which probably isn't the best spot to stand unless you're really familiar with the bees. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Now we're just going to pop the roof off that hive. If you just want to grab the hive tool, we're popping the lid off this one. And sometimes, because there's no excluder here, you find the queen right on top of the inner cover. So we're popping the inner cover off. We'll just have a quick look in case the queen is right on there. It's surprising, sometimes you will find the queen right on top of the inner cover. So today we're doing a hive swap. We're swapping the bees from this hive to another hive, and if you've got questions, put it in the comments below and we'll answer them as we go. We're in Janine Price's garden here, which is an amazing flower garden. We're getting her bees established again after the floods. Okay, can't see a queen there, but just in case, we'll lean that right up against the entrance so the bees will be able to move back, but we don't actually have have the new entrance set up yet, so that one we can take away. Then we don't need the super quite yet, and we might not even need it today, but we'll have it here just in case it's looking like we do need it. So this looks like it's all set up ready to go, which is nice. And we're going to put it right where the other hive was. Now, next thing to do is just level it up. So I've got these adjustable levels on each corner. Let's just have a look where we're sitting at the moment. That's about level there, which is neat. And on the side, you can just see from here, we actually need to come back a little bit, which there's a slope here I can just work with. Something like that. Be about right. Now, I'm just going to wind this foot down to steady it up, because one leg wasn't quite touching. There we go. Beautiful.
How quick was that?
So that's all set. Next, we're just simply going to take these frames out and put them into here. But while we're doing that, we'll have a close look at the bees, have a look how they're going, check that there's a nice laying queen, have a look out for any pests and disease as we go.
I've got a clean tool.
Great, good idea.
Shall we use this one?
Excellent. Okay, so a little bit of smoke. Here we go. It's nice to add a little bit of smoke to where you're working, and that way the bees get out of the way for you to lift a frame out. We're just trying to choose one that might easily come up. This one looks like it might. We're going to go sideways a little bit first. As usual, any questions, put it in the comments. There we go. Yep. Okay. So it looks like we've got brood on there, which is excellent. Noticing Janine's got fine styles there, making sure the comb isn't on its side, which it could just fall out. Oh, we're getting a nice waggle dance on the comb surface. If you flip it around and have a look in this area here, that's where the hive tool is. Look at that bee doing its waggle dance. And it's just in front of me. Now it's gotten camera shy. Let's see if it starts waggling again. It's amazing to stare in at this world and watch the communication going, and sometimes you can actually decode the dance and work out how far they're flying by the shake of their tush.
Wow.
So they're basically shaking about 1 second equals 750 metres of bee flight. And then the axis on which their figure of 8 dance is tells you which direction in terms of from the sun angle. So if it was tilted slightly to 20 degrees to the right of vertical, it'll be 20 degrees to the right of the sun.
Wow.
So
That's
the language of the
incredible.
bee, it's really neat when you can actually see it on the comb surface. So I've got brood there, which is a really good sign. So let's pop that one in.
Yep.
And we'll just try and keep it in the same order and way around as it was. You might need to attend to Frank there for a second. And
The
I'll
bees
start.
are more chill than Frank. Hello.
I'll start moving the next frame. Okay, so I'm just going again, levering this one apart like this. And what we're going to do is just pop that up with the end of the J tool like that. Same over here. And here we go. So it might even be better if we switch sides here so that we can get more light on the comb surface. So I'm just going to go around this side. There we go. There's so many bees in here, it's actually hard to see what's going on. So you could shake them off for a really good look here, a good thing to do. I'm just going to brush them away, and what we've got here is interesting. That's a whole lot of drones. So see how the cells stick out beyond the comb face. Here's the worker brood, the end of the tool here, and here is the drone brood, which sticks out further because they're a bigger bee, the boy bees. And same on the other side. We've got the drone larvae. Give us a thumbs up if you can see the larvae down the cells. They look like little grubs. It's neat. Okay, we've got more waggle dances going on. This hive's really talking to us today, which is neat. Okay, so we're going to put that across into the hive as well, trying to keep the same order. Now, I moved around, so I've lost which way around it went, but let's have a look, make sure it's going to work. If we put it in, actually it's the other way around, like that. So are there any questions coming in, Chase?
Yes, there's a lot of people loving the garden here at Love to Grow, and Janine, which is fantastic, and doing the hive swap. Just wondering how long this hive has been in the brood box for, that you're swapping out.
This is an older colony, so it's been in here for quite a long time. It was probably a split off another hive by the looks of it, and then it's filled out. And I'm just thinking that because you've got older frames in here, then you've got some newer ones I can see here just by looking at the wood, but they're not that new. They look like they've been in there 6 months or so since a hive split. So bit of a mix. So it looks like it was a split that then's built up over the last 6 months or so.
Fantastic. Scott's, I think I'll call it out so you can hear it without a microphone on. I haven't got one on. Scott's up in Brizzy, and just wondering about whether they should remove. I've got 2 honey frames in their brood box. I'm wondering, should they take those out to give the hives a little bit more room in the brood box?
It's pretty normal to have a couple of honey frames in the brood box. Bees actually use honey frames as a thermal mass, so they will often keep honey right on the edge. Having said that, this one here is from the edge of the hive and it's pollen and honey but no brood. So generally they keep the extremities to honey and then pollen, and then the brood is in towards the centre. But look at all of those amazing colours. There's no need to take the honey out unless you're concerned about what's called honey bound. In the springtime we do spring management, and sometimes we will move honey up just to speed up the process, make some room in the brood box for the queen to lay some fresh real estate there, and that will limit swarming tendencies. But we're past swarming season here now in Australia, so it's unlikely they're going to swarm. I'll just leave those honey frames in the brood box, or you could take one of them away and replace it with another frame and enjoy eating the honeycomb. Or if you've got naturally drawn comb, you could simply get a kitchen knife, as you've seen me do, and just cut a little bit out or a lot out of that comb, put it straight back in. The bees will build it up. You can enjoy some honeycomb too from your brood box. Okay, moving right along here.
Cedar, Harry's asking, do you need to find the queen, or can you tell that there is a queen in this box?
Okay, do you need to find the queen? In this case, the answer is no. There are a few reasons why you do need to find the queen, but in this case, we can see lots of young larvae down the cells. The hive's actually looking quite healthy. We've got a lot of brood. Look at that. We've got brood like clockwork all the way across the comb. It's really good to see. So we know there's a good laying queen in there, and we know she's a keeper, and so there's no reason to find the queen. However, if we were taking a split and we weren't doing a walk-away split is where you let the box that doesn't have the queen raise a new one. If we weren't doing that method and we're actually buying in a queen, we'd need to find out which box had the queen in it. So in that case, you would need to find the queen. And another reason you might need to find the queen is if you want to play your part in supersede you. You might decide to take her away and replace her with another queen. Beautiful. I haven't particularly been looking out for the queen, but I'll try and spot her as we go. It's looking really good. So this hive is actually ready for the super, which is good news. So at the end we can just jump in and put a super right on top of it. Now I'm not going to squash these frames up yet because I don't want to squash any bees between the end bars. Oh, there we go. But you can save that to the end, put some smoke down there to clear the bees away, and then you can go ahead and push the frames tightly together, which is what you want to do to get their spacing right for naturally drawn comb. Any more questions?
Yeah, oh, look at that, there's such calm bees here today.
Yeah.
Let's step up close so people can hear you.
Oh, oops. Really calm bees here today. Cedar, just wondering, with the frames that you've put in here and that you're transferring, are you putting them in the same order?
I am putting them in the same order. There's no reason to take them out of order, so I generally try to keep them in the same order unless there's a reason not to. There's a beautiful naturally drawn comb here on these frames. They've done a great job. This frame they've used for quite a while, as you can see by the darkness of the comb. It gets darker from the bees' footprints and also darker from the silk cocoons of the brood. So, looking good.
Looking good. Cedar, with the brood frames that you use in the foundation list, do you prefer to use them over the foundation frames?
Look, I do. Once you try foundationless and get away from sitting there late at night waxing and wiring frames, it's pretty hard to go back, simply because it's less work. It's less work because it's tedious to poke the wire through, thread it through every frame, nail it off, get it nice and tight, and then get the jumper leads out, heat up the wires and put the wax foundation in. And when I learnt you didn't need to do that, you could just use a comb guide in the top, I was like, wow, that's so much better. Because we don't need to put these frames in a centrifuge, we're not spinning these out, we now have the Flow Hive for extraction, there's no need to have the wire reinforcement. So we can just let the bees draw the comb themselves, which is really handy, and it's a joy to watch. The bees can size the cells exactly for themselves. We're not introducing any foreign wax to the hive, so there's a whole lot of benefits. But one thing that is a little bit more work is they sometimes go sideways, and you've seen me fix that up sometimes, where the bees will go a bit wonky and you get the hive tool and you push it back online. But to me that's a joy, because you're in there with the bees. I'd much rather be in here doing that little bit of work than the lot of work in the shed waxing and wiring every single frame. There's also plastic foundation you can buy, which is already ready to go, and you don't need to do that step. But my experience is the bees are a bit standoffish of plastic foundation, and you're better off using none at all. Okay, I'm lifting up the next frame and we'll put that across too. We've got a whole lot of brood there. So these bees, oh, on this side we haven't got so much brood. Oh yes, we have. It's just young brood down this cells here. Too busy talking, I haven't been looking for the queen, but that's okay. There's no need for us to find the queen today. Very nice looking larvae down this section here. Give us a thumbs up if you can see the white larvae glinting down the cells. It looks very, very nice. So it's going to be a lot of bees in this hive soon, so I think we will put the super on. We've got a queen cup here, which isn't unusual. So we will just leave that there. Let the bees do their thing. Okay, next one's going in.
Peter, Mike was asking, do you necessarily need to remove the frame's older comb, or does fresh comb have any advantage?
Okay, it's a good idea to cycle frames out. So while you're doing your beekeeping, if you see some really dark old ones, you could shift them towards the edge. So every season or two, you can then be cycling the frames out. So the dark old ones in the middle, every now and then you put them to the edge, and then once all the broods emerge and you've only got honey and pollen in that outer edge, then you can cut that out, take it away, enjoy the honeycomb, or compost it if there's not much going on in that frame at the time. And then you can put that empty frame back in the centre again. So it's a cycle of cutting out some of the old dark wax. The reason you do that is just to reduce the pathogen load, freshen up the wax, give some nice fresh wax for the queen to lay in, and that'll just help the hive prosper. Okay, there's another frame here. We're going to get out. The bees are being very well behaved. You probably wouldn't really need a bee suit today, so it's nice when you've got calm bees like that. Especially when you're around the family. So here we go. This one's a bit heavier. It says to me that it's got a bunch of honey in it. I can feel the weight of it. And I'm looking all around this area is honey, and it's capped honey. So that's the stores, the carbohydrates that the bees use to keep going and do all of their work. Same here, we've got a bit of brood, but we've got a lot of honey over here. Also take note of the size of the cells. The size of the cells are above 6 millimetres here that they're using for honey storage. When you get further away from the brood nest, there's the queen. When you get further away from the brood nest, then typically the bees will make bigger cells because it's more efficient to store honey that way, and that's why we made the flow frames a bigger size cell than the worker brood size, which you see over in this region. So there's the queen, beautiful looking queen, nice and big. It's been doing a fantastic job of laying, nice genetics. She's a keeper. Just
Nice.
in front of my fingers there. Give us a thumbs up if you can see the queen there.
Oh, great
Notice she's
spotting.
got different movement to the other bees. She tends to stride and strut. She's got bigger legs, she's got a longer abdomen, and she's a very important bee to the hive.
Nice. Cedar, Mitchell's just wondering, the hive that we're taking it, I've got a microphone on now.
Okay,
I've
great.
got Janine's. Mitchell's just wondering, the hive that you're taking them from is an Araucaria, a hoop pine, and it's painted. He's just wondering, does it affect the breathability of the timber?
That's a good question. I think paint, yes, does affect breathability of timber, but generally the Araucaria we recommend a good outdoor house paint. It's been tried and tested on houses for a long time, and that type of wood is, you're better off putting a good exterior house paint on the outside of it, and that'll make it last longer. Whereas the Western Red Cedar actually has properties that repel rot and things like that, so you can use outdoor decking products and things on that, and it'll stay looking like wood for longer. So I've got this frame with the Queen on it, and I'll put that right in the box just so I know she doesn't escape. We don't want to orphan her from the hive if we can help it. And next what we're going to do is try and push the frame over. Now my smoke has probably gone out by now, so I'm going to need to redo that. But we just need a little bit of mulch, if you can find some dry mulch there, Trace. Smoke's handy when you're moving bees away from an area, and typically if you've been talking too long like I have been, the smoke is left to go out, and you've got to get it going again. Not even sure if there's any, we might need that lighter again too actually.
Dry.
I don't think it's going to go.
We got the lighter.
Beautiful. So we're just going to get that smoker going again, just so we've got some smoke to move bees out of the way to push these frames together, so we can complete the process of actually shifting these bees into their new box. Now the mulch is a little bit wet from the garden. We've had a bit of rain, so it's going to take us a second to get this going actually. Wet mulch. Okay, to light a smoker when there's wet mulch, sometimes you're better off starting again, tipping the ash out of it, and a little bit of cardboard or paper really does help. We'll try and get it going with wet mulch, and this type of mulch tends to fall together quite tightly and not have enough oxygen in order to actually stay going. So I'm going to not let it fall from the bottom. Let's see, is this a bit drier? A little bit drier. We'll try and get this going again. So putting it in. This is a typical thing beekeepers do. You get part way through, the smoke has gone out, I have to light it again. But wet mulch is hard. Okay. Can you grab a little bit of paper, Trace?
Yeah.
I'll speed up this little process here. So I'm actually going to lean the smoker over. So otherwise if it falls down to the bottom when it's this type of mulch, which is quite fine, generally goes out because all of the mulch compacts together and it doesn't have enough oxygen to go. And with wet mulch like this, it's not going to go at all. Here we go. So what I'm going to do next is grab a little bit of cardboard, which you can see from the Flow Hive packaging over here. And that will get us going. Whip that up. Meanwhile, if you've got any questions, then chime in and we'll get back to closing up this hive, finishing our job of swapping the hive over.
I'm glad you're doing this today, Cedar. I had a similar issue with my own hive on the weekend, and I think it was the wet mulch, but the coiling up the cardboard seems to be a good little trick.
It does. It can get you out of trouble sometimes using a bit of cardboard because it just lights and keeps burning. So that you can see the flames there now, and that'll get us going again. Then we can put the wet mulch on top, and away we go again. Very nice. Use your gloves and your hive tool if you need to.
Michael's asking, Cedar, is there such a thing as too much smoke?
Look, you would think that smoke's generally not the best thing to blow into an insect's face, so too much smoke is not a good idea. just use enough to do what you need to do. So a couple of good puffs in the entrance before you start, wait a few minutes, and then wherever you need to move bees out of the way, it's a handy thing. I think if you ask the bees and they could answer, you said, would you rather a bit of smoke or would you rather have bees getting squashed between the bars? They'd probably say use the smoke, I think. So a little bit of smoke down between the end bars here. There's a little bee stuck there, and that clears them away. We can start pushing those end bars together. That's it. And very nice. Again here. So once the bees are out of in between them, push them together like that. And we want to use any excess space on either side. So you'll notice that the flow hives have a generous amount of space in the hive, which is handy because as things get more gummed up and the comb gets thicker and older, you'll really appreciate that extra space that we've put there. Next frame, last one. Any more questions coming in?
Yeah, Seeds. Herds and Hives is asking on our first summer beekeeping, and they're still feeding 3 or 4 hives due to the wet weeks and months here in southeast Melbourne in Australia. Just running until what month can I hope they will turn around and give us their surplus honey before winter sets in again? It's a tricky one.
So yeah, that is a tricky one. So, you know, sometimes the seasons don't allow and sometimes they do. So in the end, we're hoping that the bees and their amazing honey storers will store more than they need, and we can share some too. So here we are in summer, so there's a good chance you'll get a good summer flow in Melbourne. My sister keeps bees down there, and hopefully you'll get a good summer and maybe even an autumn flow. So fingers crossed, let us know how you go with your honey crop. The further you go into the colder areas, the later the spring starts, but we're well into summer now, so we might not get that spring boom anymore, but you'll notice that depending on where you are and ask your local beekeepers, you might get some good summer flows and autumn flows to really get that honey stored. Okay, we've got all the frames in now, which is great, and I've pushed them all together, which is an important step. We don't need to put the inner cover on yet because I can see that these bees are actually ready for their super. We've got a noisy helicopter flying past. And so the next thing we're going to do is pick up the super here. We're going to seize the moment while there's actually no bees around the edge of the hive.
Oh.
And Queen Excluder, if you would.
Queen Excluder.
Thank you. You can run without one, but you have to be more onto it and make sure you don't have a queen that likes to lay in flow frames. So I'm just moving that up to the edge there. On goes the super. So the Queen Excluder is sized so the queen actually can't get through, so there's no chance of her laying in the flow frames up here. So next what we're going to do is just make sure these flow frames have set up. Sometimes in transport the parts can move so they're not quite in line. Important step to do, we're going to pull out these top caps here, and we're simply going to put the key in the top slot, give it a turn in each frame, and what that will do is just push all those parts down to where they need to be. So here we go, and to a 90. That's it there. Again, make sure you go all the way to the back. So pretty quick step, but an important one in case some of the parts are out of line. There we go. Almost there. And done. Now the caps can go back in, like this. You'll notice if the frame's out of line, we put a tag there, which means if the last cell's out of line or you've completely left it in the open position, you try and put this in and it won't quite go in, and that's a reminder that you need to reset that frame after you've been harvesting. Okay, beautiful. Now the next thing we're going to do is just make sure this face is in line. They're not quite in line, and that's because we actually haven't adjusted the screw at the back here. So the bees eventually wax them all in place, and being a little short on time here, I'm just going to move them to the front like this, and I'll let the bees do the job of waxing them into position. So now they form a nice flat window all the way across here. There's nowhere that bees are escaping, which is good. Inner cover goes on like that. Then, while we could shake the last bees in, we know the queen went in the box, so we can just let them go in by themselves, or we can just shake them out the front. But that's it. We've actually completed our hive swap now. We've got a couple of little pieces to go, which is the cover here for the key access cover we call it. Goes right in there. And then the gabled roof right on top of the inner cover. Any more questions coming through?
Yeah, there's a few coming through now, Seeds, and also I've just got to do a little bit of a shout out to Hamish Tame, who's a Flow ambassador in Bowral here in New South Wales and Australia, and he runs workshops for beginners and more experienced beekeepers on his property at Bowral, and he's currently running weekly for Flow Hive fun workshops for beginners that are hands-on and are designed for people completely new to beekeeping. He's also involved, spending a lot of time with the DPI on all the Varroa mite incursion, and he's also running really fantastic workshops calling Midlife Crisis and Queen Rearing. Anyway, that's just a shout out for Hamish, and there's links in Facebook Live, you'll see it today if you're keen to go and do some awesome work with Hamish Tame.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah.
I love it, Hamish. Well done, and keep up the good work with the Varroa and also helping all of these new beekeepers get started. So if you're in that area, reach out. Hamish might be able to help you get started.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So just and another question, the fact that you've left that box there now, we've got Eric tuning in and saying, will the bees now just find their way back in?
Look, they will, but we can speed up the process quite simply by shaking the bees out the front. So when you're trying to get bees off something, a good hard shake is what you need. Most of the beekeeping movements that you've seen have just been calm and slow. If you're trying to get things off, then you actually give them a good bang like that. And there we go, you've only got a couple of bees left on there, and the bees get right off. And we can leave that one over there. Now this one, I think, has the bottom, it has been screwed onto it, so I can't get the bottom off this box. So what we'll have to do is pick up the base and the box and give it a good shake, which is not quite as successful usually as getting all the bees out. But I'm just going to shake them out the front like this, just by giving a good hard shake. So that's got a lot of them out, and any remaining ones we'll just put over here in the garden, and they all know where home is. They'll fly out and join back into the hive. So that's it, job done. And just make sure the box is nicely lined up while we're here. And there's a few other little things to do I can see that need doing, like these L screws on the windows. There's probably not much happening in here yet. No, nothing at all, because the bees will need to build up before they're occupying the top box. So we're just going to screw them all the way in so they do a better job of holding the windows in place. Just by turning it around like that, screwing them in, and there we go. Otherwise it's all looking pretty good. I could do a little bit better job of lining up the bottom. You can see here that it's slightly out of line. Just going to push it across and see if we can get it to move. Might need to use my hive tool. Looks like the decking finish we've used has actually doing a decent job of sticking the box together. Okay. So we're just going to lift it a little bit, and that gets it moving. There we go. So you've got a better line there, side to side. And here I could come across a little bit. One trick is if your boxes are really well stuck together, you can use one of those builder's clamps that you squeeze like that, and it'll help bring the parts together. Okay, we've got vents up here, so that's good. And we're making sure the vented cover is pressed really nice and tight in against the tray so no bees can escape and get into the tray section if Janine's using it for trapping those pesky small hive beetles. Any more questions while we're here?
Stuart, that seems Dad, in fact. Urds and Hives has got another question just on wondering, what is the latest month that you can split a hive here in southeast Melbourne?
Southeast Melbourne. So as always, ask your local beekeepers, get a few opinions. But I suspect you'd be splitting hives, at the latest you'd probably split hives in that area would be end of summer. Just knowing that they need to build up a few stores to get through of the winter ahead. So you'd then be relying on them building up a little bit or feeding it prior to the winter to make sure they've got enough stores to last while there's not many flowers about.
Right, and see the lucky last question on the hive swap that you've just done. At what point do you think it'll be time to check that super?
Okay, so the bees had built out all the frames, but they're not really bulging, which means that they will take a little while to build up. So it depends on what flowers around here. If we get a good flowering, they'll build up quite quickly and start storing, but if they don't get a whole lot of flowers, then they'll be quite slow to start storing in the honey super. As for the brood, they're pretty ripe for the moment. You probably don't need to inspect them for a while. They've drawn nice straight comb, they've got a great laying queen, they've got a lot of brood, all the stores they need. So you could probably leave that for a few months now before doing another brood inspection to see what was going on. But you can simply look in the windows and see how progress is going. Hopefully Janine gets a good flow here in Burring Bar. The bees go and get that nectar, bring it all back to the hive, and she starts to get some nice late summer and autumn honey harvest here. And hopefully it also does a good job of pollinating some of the flowers here. And through pollination, then she'll get seed set, and she does an amazing job. She works on permaculture principles here, so I'm sure she's saving those seeds and replanting them and loving growing flowers. Thank you very much for tuning in. Same time next week, let us know what you'd like us to cover, and see you there.